It's not anything to be ashamed of to say, well, it kind of looks like that structure's worked quite well for the entire duration of mankind, and so maybe we mess with it at our peril.
You're hearing about family values from the childless and unmarried. Don't follow them.
The women have to stop blaming men for their sense of malaise or misery.
I didn't create you people to kill and torture and rape each other. I created you to be good to each other. I love the God who had a flood.
Hey guys, well, I've been having far too much fun on Twitter lately, and that's actually a bad thing. I need to get off that shit. But, this is an important topic that needs to be covered, and I just happened upon it almost unexpectedly, though it was something that I knew I was going to eventually discuss, and it is political homelessness that has been happening across the left side of the spectrum as liberals realize that they're no longer being represented. But this was encapsulated when Armored Skeptic actually came out against a video done by Black Pigeon Speaks. I'm not sure as to the content of the video, but here's the tweet from Armored Skeptic. Y'all motherfuckers really need to stop calling yourself center left. Blaming the pendulum swing for your political compass change is like saying, quote, my opinions didn't change, reality changed around my opinions, end quote. Where have you been living, Armored Skeptic? Under a rock? This has been happening all the time. And to illustrate my point, I retweeted it with the response, when the left goes from safe, legal, and rare to abortion on demand up until just after birth, that is the definition of reality changing around your opinions. Demanding people stay the same when the mask comes off is not healthy. When stabbed in the back, you burn the loss. Now, his response to this was as follows. It's okay to be anti-freedom if other people use their freedom to do things you don't like. Got it. Now, that wasn't my point. This was not, the abortion was just the example. Now, for full disclosure, most of you should know that I'm adamantly pro-life. I make no apologies for that, and I'll argue that position eloquently and to the best of my ability, very proficiently. I have my opinions, I know what I believe, and I know why I believe them. But this wasn't about abortion. This wasn't about that particular topic. Abortion was just one of the many examples that I was using to illustrate the fact that political reality has changed for a lot of people. And it's gotten to the point to where those who considered themselves liberals or leftists are homeless. They have nowhere to go because the side they once thought represented them turned out to be an ugly monstrosity and they don't know how to cope with it. Now, my position with those people, now there are people who are reasonably safe, legal, and rare, and me and them share the same sentiment, but we don't agree with the same outcome. I believe that if you are personally pro-life, it is irresponsible and cowardly for you to advocate a pro-choice policy. And that's, for me, that's just a position of moral cowardice on their part, but that's subject to opinion. That's subject to your own views and your own interpretation of how reality works, which differs for everyone, sadly. But back to this, to my main point of the fact that yes, reality does change, and you are no way obligated to have that shift occur and then say, oh, I'm full alt-right, or I'm a right-winger, or I'm no longer this, that, or the other. Black Pigeon Speaks in his video apparently believes he's center-left. I have no evidence to the contrary. He may very well be center-left. And that's not an invalid belief, at least on his part, because the fact is reality has shifted significantly in a very short period of time. But this isn't the first time. And this is where I'd like to sit down and explain to you how I, over my lifetime, have seen this happen. My grandfather was very political, very outspoken, very active. In fact, if we have in our family history newspaper clippings of the front page of him marching with Cesar Chavez, fighting for immigrants' rights, fighting with the ACLU, who also recently decided that hate speech is a thing and free speech needs to take a back seat. My grandfather is a liberal. He was a staunch liberal, and he believed in being fair and compassionate. Believe it or not, back in the 90s, there was a time when people advocated for illegal immigrants' rights on the sincere belief that if you advocated for illegal immigrants' rights, for their better treatment, for their wages, and for their how would you say, their quality of life, if you fought for these things, it would make the appeal to other companies to hire them much less, and then therefore incentivize them to hire Americans instead, because it would just be easier to deal with rather than go through the extra hoops of hiring an illegal immigrant. That didn't fucking turn out well, did it? And why didn't it turn out? It's not because these people in the 80s or the 90s had any malicious intent. They didn't. They honestly and sincerely held these beliefs. They honestly and sincerely believed that if they took care of illegal immigrants better in the United States, that it would make it harder for American companies to accommodate the illegal immigrants. Except that's not what happened. In making it easier for the illegal immigrant only harmed the American worker even further. It depressed wages. It made everything worse because that's not what the agenda was set for. These were the people on the ground, the people who were being convinced by their higher-ups that they had their best interest at heart. My grandfather watched the Democratic Party betray everything he ever stood for. And the reason he never became a Republican was because he couldn't stand being part of the party of Rush Limbaugh. Now, that he's, I'm not going to invalidate his opinions there, because he was one of those rare individuals who did listen to both sides. He listened to Rush Limbaugh in the morning and absolutely hated him, but he listened to him. But I shit you not, my grandfather was an amazing man. He helped set up unions on the docks. He helped set up unions on many, and he supported unions. He loved the idea of unions. But by the time he was getting ready to die, give or take 5 years or so, he looked at my father in the face and said, "If your union calls a strike, scab." Unironically, completely unironically, he was dead serious, because he watched the unions become benevolent mafias. He watched the unions raise their dues, which you don't really get much back from them anymore, because the union kept voting to increase their wages as opposed to investing in their futures, investing in their families, investing in their health care. They weren't taking care of themselves, and they knew it. And the union bosses knew that they were screwing over their workers over in the long run. He watched this happen, and it absolutely broke his heart. This happens all the time. This happens all the time, where the reality changes around you in ways you didn't expect, and you're out in the dark. You're out in the cold. This happened with the Bernie bros in the Trump election. This idea that reality doesn't change, and that your political opinions and that your changes on the political spectrum are static, is absolute bullshit, and skeptics should fucking know better. I mean, for God forbid, Gregory, if Shoe on Head were completely excommunicated from the left because she's anti-PETA, because that's literally the trajectory we're on. If, for whatever reason, June is no longer permitted to have any friends on the left because she's anti-pedophilia, what are you going to say to us then? Is she suddenly now a right-winger Nazi because she hates pedos? She denigrates MAPS on a regular basis? Is that going to change who June is? Of course not. Of course not. Of course fucking not. So this idea that we need to stay within the accepted paradigms is absolutely ludicrous. And I don't accept it at all. I don't know why anyone would. And as a matter of fact. And I don't know, just this entire rant disturbs me. In fact, one of my good friends on Facebook, since I joined the Liberalists and got active in that area, he's personally pro-life, or so he's on the edge with, but he considers himself to be pro-choice. And I was talking with him, and he personally divulged, in a comment thread, look, if I have to choose the world where children can be aborted after they're born and a world where no abortion is permitted at all, I have to choose the no abortion stance, because that's where my morality is. And I responded to him that he's not alone. He's absolutely not alone. And he's not atypical at all. He's not in any way a stranger to that phenomena. And my take on that is the left has lied so much the conservatives need to take control. There needs to be a shift to the right radically, because what we're doing is we're changing things so fast no one trusts anything that we that we're a part of. There's no trust at all. And this is not just a political thing. This is a societal issue where if things move too fast, people get very disenfranchised. And how do I put this? It's almost evolution. In the same way, if you look at the human hand, the same makeup of the hand with the thumb and the four extensions, the four phalanges, that pattern is not only in the hand, it's in the wings of birds, and it's even displayed in the fins of whales. This same pattern of the human hand has a genetic precursor way back in the evolutionary line. Yet, despite the fact that this is the same, that all these things share the same blueprint, they all developed in different ways. And that's why, in my opinion, society is much better off adapting from a very conservative paradigm. Because if we're not moving in a conservative paradigm, we're doing things that are not tenable, they're not survivable. Because at least with conservatives, it's not that conservatism is anti-change. You have to justify it. And that's what's most important, is the change that you're seeking to promote has to be justified at the end of the day. And that's why when society is viewed through a conservative paradigm, these change will take place under a conservative paradigm. You have to understand that. Being conservative is not being anti-change. Being conservative means trusting in the principles that got you to where you are and being grateful for who you are and how you got there. Conservatism, boiled down to its fundamental, to its core value, is gratitude. And too many people don't recognize that for the wonderful thing that it is. But to all of you who are politically homeless, if you find yourself turning quote unquote right wing, you're not actually turning right wing. It's not you. You've not actually changed. And if you're waking up from the bad relationship with the left, Don't let anyone shame you into being something that you're actually not. My grandfather didn't change all those years. He as a person did not change. He had an expectation, and the expectation was brutally failed. It was brutally disappointed. It was let down, and it was let down because the left is maniacal. The left is absolutely diabolical in their way of subverting the intentions of the populace into something that works against their own interest. And I don't see that stopping anytime soon. So that's those are my thoughts on political homelessness as a phenomena. And I'm just shocked that Armored Skeptic of all people would come out and say that reality didn't change around people's opinions. That fucking happens all the time. And it's happening with alarming, at an increased rate that is alarming in the last couple of years. I mean, that Bernie bros would turn into Trump supporters is fascinating. That abortion would go from safe, legal, and rare to go ahead, kill the baby after it's born. And no, that's not an exaggeration. It actually, that was discussed. The story of my grandfather, these are not uncommon stories. Oh, and one more thing. The Democratic Party used to claim to be the party of family, of care, of the working man. It no longer is. The Democratic Party of my grandfather would have never backed gay marriage. They never would have backed abortion to this degree. The Democratic Party of my grandfather would have never said, yeah, let's have illegal immigrants come in and take all of the jobs that your kids are supposed to have. The Democratic Party of my grandfather would have never said that. The fact that because he wanted to throw some shade at Black Pigeon Speaks for claiming to be center-left, because Black Pigeon Speaks apparently has some nostalgia for being once center-left. Understand that, Black Pigeon Speaks, when he has that experience or makes that claim, he's not crazy. He's absolutely not beside himself. He's not trying to be disingenuous. That's what I need to reinforce here. These people are genuine. These people are genuinely concerned and they're trying to reclaim who they were, but and reconcile with where they've gone. And it's these people haven't changed. It's not that the individual has changed. Black Pigeon Speaks is very much the same individual he was when he set off on the journey to the beliefs that he has now. The problem is the political paradigm, the reality that, forces us all to act in our own interests has shifted. And I was floored that he would even level the accusation that saying that reality has shifted is somehow absurd. It is not absurd. That is the norm today. And if we don't address it, we're never going to solve that problem. Well, that is pretty much what I have had to say on the issue. If you fall into this category, come on over to the right, because we like making friends. And yeah, you're going to get shit for it, but such is life. Stay carnal, my friends. Have a good one. Bye.